Mr. Bouye. I'm Ariel, and so I'm very excited to be doing the interview with you today. Um, Thank you so much for taking your time and doing it. Today we're going to be talking about your book, Because of Mr. Terupt. And so can you start by telling us a bit more about yourself and the book?
Hi, Ariel. Thanks for having me join you today. I'm excited to have a chance to hang out with you. I watched some of your previous interviews, and you're killing it with this
Thank you.
stuff. So, so I've been looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Now, as far as I guess background for me, I was a teacher. I spent a total of 6 years in the elementary classroom teaching first, fourth grade, and then a few years teaching third grade. I
Yeah.
was not um, I was not a writer or excited about writing until becoming a teacher. So when I was a kid, did I want to grow up and write books? No way. No way. Never did I think I would be doing this. Now, I was a serious student, like my character Luke. I was a serious student. My mother would tell you I was more like Peter when I was a kid. There's some truth to that. I can't tell you all of my stories though, Ariel. But as a boy, I'd say I was a mix of those two, Peter and Luke. That's not me saying I was the smartest, but I was serious about school like that boy. I knew it would be important for my future. I worked hard. I did well. So I was a mix of those two, but I was nothing like Jessica, this girl who loves reading and writing. No way. No, I did that stuff in school when I had to, and that was it. Now, let me just say, I wish I discovered a passion for reading when I was a kid. I'd be better at what I'm doing today if that were the case. Nobody but a reader becomes a writer. Every author would tell you that. You've got to read, read, read. But for me, it took a while. It wasn't until I became a teacher.
Yeah.
And what happened is this. I remember reading some of the stories that my fourth graders were writing, and I was floored. They were so good, and it got me really excited. And I wanted to help my students as best I could. I wanted to encourage them and help them to get better. And so I challenged myself to get started writing. I started writing so I could become a better teacher of writing. That's what it was. And so I began writing short stories, just fun, silly 2, 3 page stories that I would take into school to share with my students on a regular basis. So I had examples of things that you could do as writers and storytellers, but really it was about participating with them, celebrating it, having fun, building community, just really making writing a big deal. And what happened is this: in order for me, the teacher, to keep
Mhm.
writing stories to share with my students, all of
Yeah.
a sudden I had to get busy thinking about stories more and more. And so I dedicate my first book, Because of Mr. Terupt, to my former students. It's because of them I started writing. It's because of the many wonderful days, experiences we shared together. I've been left with a lot of memories that have sparked ideas, and I could talk more about that as we keep going. But really, more than anything else, it's because of them I turned my writing switch on. So I'm getting ahead of myself here a little bit, I think. But in terms of writing advice, this is one of the most important things I could share with you, this thing I call
Yes.
the writing switch. Um, if you imagine a light switch on the wall, you can flip that on and off. I think everybody has in their head what I think of as a writing switch. And for you, Ariel, it's likely you turn it on at writing and then turn it off when writing's over. Um, but what's different for a writer or an author, you never turn the switch off. You're just every day as you go through daily life, you're thinking like a writer,
Yeah.
thinking about stories, characters, mulling stuff around. And so thanks to my students, I turn that switch on. And when you've got that switch on all the time, you find ideas can come to you when you least expect it. And that's what happened. I got hit by an idea that grabbed a hold of me and took off and put me on the path of trying to write my first book.
Yeah. And Um, yeah, like you said, it is said here, for the third and fourth graders at Bethany Community School who inspired me to write, it was everyday mysteries and spontaneity gave me a story to tell. Yeah, it says, yeah.
Yeah, the dedication. Yeah.
So how'd you come up with the title?
The title was maybe the last thing that actually was figured out for the book. When I first wrote the story, the title I gave it was Voices from the Classroom. because that's really how the idea hit me. When the idea came to me, I had these 7 kids telling me about the first day of school. I could hear them taking turns telling me about the first day of school. And so that's how I got started writing it,
Yeah.
taking time pretending to be each of these kids. And so the idea of voices from the classroom, that's what I called it. And then it was changed. I had some people in the publishing world suggest that I change it. They thought that sounded like a nonfiction title. And so the next one was The Dollar Word Man. And that was going to be the title. My publisher made a cover for The Dollar Word Man, and they sent it to me so I could check it out. And I was really excited.
Yeah.
That was the first time I'd ever seen my name on the cover of a book. But I was only excited for a few seconds, and really it was only a few seconds because I knew it was the wrong cover. I didn't like it. And I told my editor, and she said, okay, we'll go back to the drawing board and see what we can do. Well, she called me the next day and said, we can't find a cover for the Dollar Word Man. You need a new title. And so then I was back to brainstorming titles. I had a short list because of Mr. Terupt was on that list, and my editor picked it right away. She said, that's it. That's the one. It was my favorite on the list too. I like that title because, well, in the end, you can say, there's a lot that happens. Ultimately, the kids change and come together, and it's all because of Mr. Terupt. That phrase kind of just captures a whole lot about
There's a
the
lot of things
story.
here that happens because of Mr. Trump.
Sure. So that's how ultimately
School
I
years
came
for
to
them.
it.
It was one of the best school years for them, I think, because of Mr. Trump too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So are there any interesting or memorable experiences that happened in your life that you influenced into the book?
Well, a lot of times readers of that book, because of Mr. Terupt, and really readers of any of my stories, I'm often asked, did any of it actually happen? And I always like to answer that by saying yes. Yes, it did.
Yeah.
Sort of, but not really. So that's the answer to your question, Ariel. Yes, sort of, but not really. So as I'm working on a story, well, let me just say, having been a teacher for many years, I met a lot of kids, tried a lot of projects, things like calculating blades of grass, for instance, plant concoctions. I did a lot of those things. And so in the end, I've been left with a lot of memories from teaching, wonderful
You
experiences.
actually
And
did the calculated
those,
blades of grass thing?
yeah, we did it. We did it. Now here's the thing, Ariel. Why do I say yes, sort of, but not really? Because when I take something like that and I put it into the story, I don't write it down the way it really happened. This is when writing can become a lot of fun. It's fun to take imagination, creativity, add it to what was real, so you can change it and
Yeah,
make it
because
a whole lot.
it doesn't have to be direct. Like you can
Yeah,
change it up as much as you want.
that's right. And
You
it's
could say
fun.
that as
So
they were counting the grass, a unicorn sprouted, and so
yeah, I could.
in fact,
The part I added was the cardboard frisbee that they zing across and tattoos Lexi and the Tushy. That didn't really happen, but I had fun putting that in the story. So yeah,
so what?
Ariel, I'll never forget the day I had my a student Steven brought his ball python snake into the classroom to show it off. Big, fat, thick, legit snake. Um, Yeah, things went crazy in the classroom that day. The wheels fell off the bus. That shows up in the third Mr. Terupt book. Saving Mr. Terupt, Luke ends up with a ball python that he names Stanley. And Stanley has a pretty terrific scene in that story. And that's all because of a classroom memory that I made a lot better in the book.
Yeah,
Although that memory was really fantastic in real life, too. I haven't told you all about it, but trust me, it was pretty awesome.
it actually happened. Like, did it bite anyone or?
No, no, it didn't bite anybody. But it was fun. Steven, I don't want to give anything away. You'll have to. There's some imagination in the book, but yeah, it was pretty fun.
Yeah. Um, how did you come up with the whole idea of um Mr. Trump? How did you come up with
So
the name?
the characters, when creating characters, this is true for the kids, for Mr. Terupt, for Mrs. Williams. It's true with the Mr. Terupt series and all the other books I've written as well. These characters are bits and pieces of a lot of different people. plus bits and pieces of me, and then my imagination glued together.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I work with, and that's what really helps me with these characters. So a lot of times readers wonder if I had Mr. Terupt. Is that why I wrote the book? No. Had teachers I still remember and really liked, but not Mr. T. I've taken bits and pieces of some older teachers and used them with other characters, not Mr. Terupt. So then I'm often asked if I was Mr. Terupt. Um, and again, I'll say no. Every reader agrees this guy's awesome. Uh, Many readers say I wish he were my teacher, so I would never say I was that guy. But being that guy, being Mr. Terupt was always the goal. I worked hard to be a teacher like that,
Yeah.
and some
Mr.
days I
Trump
came
being
close, and other
other,
days I came up short. But he's bits and pieces of me, and then a lot of imagination to make him better. So you heard me say I did calculating blades of grass. I did a lot of those projects.
yeah,
That's one of the bigger pieces of me and in the character is his love for projects. Um, but then a lot of imagination to make him better.
yeah. Um, so, um, can you tell us about your process of writing the book and how long it took?
Well, that first book, Because of Mr. Terupt, took 6 years. I was busy teaching when I started writing the story. I was coaching, children being born. Before I got done with that story, we moved as a family, my wife and kids. We moved. I changed jobs. I went from teaching third grade to teaching high school biology at a boarding school. I was living at a school with kids from all over the world, teaching high school all of a sudden. There was a lot of life going on as I was working on the first story. And with the first story, you've got to shop it around and see if you can find somebody that wants to publish it. And I'm sure you've heard from other authors that's really hard, and there's a lot of failure, most likely, before it happens. Rejection letters. Thanks for sharing it, but the answer is no. Good luck. So for me, it took 6 years with that first book. It was a long haul, is what I could say. As far as process, do I have? I wonder if I could show you this. Let me see if I have. So when working with now this isn't because of Mr. Terupt, but it's the same idea. When I'm working with multiple perspectives, I tend to create this grid with my characters down the side and chapters along the top, and I play Battleship in this box, key ideas for that kid, this chapter. And then I work to fill it all in. Now I could tell you I do not have it all filled in when I start writing. I have enough, I hit a point of excitement, I can't wait. I get busy going. And here's what happens as I write, it helps me to come up with ideas. That's probably the way I get ideas more than any other. I just get ideas by continuing to do the work. So as I write, I learn more about the story, the characters. I get ideas that helps me to fill in those other boxes. But you can see it gets messy too, right? Because if I get new ideas, I have to change things and redo and
Yeah.
revise. Revising's by far most of the work. So
Um,
that's how I'm able to get going with it. I know there are authors that would have that grid completely filled in before they even start. Um, Not me. I have some, not all of it. There's other authors who I guess don't plan at all. They just jump in and get going with their character and see what happens. So, but I'm kind of the in between.
yeah, yeah. I've actually tried writing a few chapters here and there, and I think I'm also an in between because I've got some of the story figured out, but then what's going to happen? Why is this going to happen? When's that going to happen? All that
Yeah.
questions.
Well, hearing you say that, Ariel, let me share this with you. So sometimes, you sit down to write and you don't have it all figured out, and you might just like freeze. You're thinking, oh, I don't have it all figured out. I'm not quite sure what to do. Um, and getting started can be hard, right? There's a lot of authors that really struggle with that. So here's what helps me. When I sit down, I give myself a daily reminder. Every time I sit down, I have to remind myself that whatever I write, it's never perfect the first time. It's just
Yeah,
not. And once I remember that, it kind of gives me permission to stop worrying. Stop worrying you don't have it all figured out. Just start. Put down one word, two words, one sentence, two sentences. Because once you get going, it's easier to keep going. And usually, once you get going, that kind of helps you figure out what you want to do. So that also means that's probably why this stuff gets so messy because that's what I do. But that's how it works for me.
yeah. So what message or theme do you hope readers learn from the book?
I don't tend to think about messages or themes as I'm at least not in the beginning. Maybe I do more than I realize. I I don't know. When I was tackling Because of Mr. Terupt, that certainly wasn't something I was thinking about. But in the course of writing it, I became aware of some important things. So, for instance, one thing, um, I think that hopefully one important takeaway with that book is that you come to realize we shouldn't be so quick to judge one another, especially when you don't know everything about each other. So, when you first start reading that book as a reader, I'm sure you form some pretty strong opinions about certain characters, but after you could stick with them and turn the pages more and more, and you get to learn more about them, feelings change. And I think that's an important takeaway, a good message. Just try not to be so quick to judge one another when you don't know everything that's going on behind the scenes. Um, so that was pretty important one for me. Certainly everything that goes along with the collaborative classroom, also a pretty powerful message. The
Yeah.
characters aren't too excited about that project. They don't say the nicest things, but by the end that all changes. And I think that's a pretty important takeaway too, to realize people with special needs they have a whole lot to offer too.
Yeah. If you could travel back in time and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
Listen to my mother. You want to know why I say that, Ariel? Because I would complain, Mom, I'm bored. And what would she say? Read a book. And I never did when I was a kid. And I already told you in the beginning, I wish I was a reader as a kid. I'd be better at what I'm doing today. So I would listen to my mother when she said to read a book. I would take her up on that and maybe sit down and try reading a book a little more than I did.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you could give one piece of advice to kids who want to become authors, or authors who are
What
authors, what would it
what
be?
would that be, right?
Yeah.
Um, well, read. I imagine every author says that. Read, 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 and it's true. The reading is what's going to help you grow as writers and storytellers the most.
Yeah.
But then I talked about the writing switch, right? That's huge. It's so important that you understand you could be thinking like a writer and thinking about your writing in your head, even when away from the desk. The work that's done in the head went away, hands down, some of the absolute most important. Some of
Yeah.
my very best stuff has been in the head when away from the desk.
What do you enjoy doing for fun, other than reading and writing? Because
Sure. I like games, board games. Um, Not so much video games, though. If my kids were involved, got me on the video game, we've had some Mario Kart battles over the years, so I don't mind that. But I enjoy a good board game and,
yeah,
most anything. It could be Monopoly, it could be Pictionary, cards, any of that. So I like that stuff. Um, I enjoy movies. I like to, I'll sit down and watch a movie from I enjoy sporting events, so watching different stuff. Right now, I'm paying attention to the Boston Bruins, but things aren't going so well just yet. So hoping they turn that around. Exercise, I enjoy staying active. Crossword puzzles. So those are a few things. I've got a couple dogs. Certainly spending time with them and my family. Yeah.
yeah. So are you planning to write any more books?
I am actually, Ariel. Here's the cover for my newest one. It's not out yet. This will be out in September.
Ooh,
Yeah. Oh, I'm glad to hear you say that. I like the cover
Avery,
too.
freaking fourth
Carter
grade
Avery's
year.
Tricky Fourth Grade Year. This will be out in
That
September.
sounds really interesting. Huh.
Uh, September. It's coming.
Wait, is
So
that a
this is.
graphic novel?
It is not.
Oh,
No. You wonder with the cover though, huh?
yeah, it
No.
looks like one.
So this one will be out in September, as I said. This is not multiple perspectives. It's a single voice narrator. Carter tells the
Yeah.
story. Carter is the boy. Find out Carter Avery's in their class. No teacher wants Carter Avery. And Ms. Crane, well, she's the teacher that no kid wants. So you've got the teacher no kid wants and the kid that no teacher wants. And guess what? Bang, they are together.
Together.
And it makes for a tricky fourth grade school year.
Yeah.
That one's lots of fun.
I wonder why no one wants him.
Well,
I'll definitely read it to find out. So thank you so very much for taking your time and doing this interview today. I really enjoyed the book that we have here because of Mr. Terupt. So yeah, thank you so much for your time.